Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show. I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining me today. Now, if you are an emotional eater and or if you just feel like you've got struggles with food you can't figure out, you're in the right place. Here's where we talk about the real stuff, the real issues that drive us to overeat. I was 50 pounds overweight and no diet was going to solve my problem. Trust me, 98% of all diets fail because they're really not designed to work. I mean, people who struggle chronically with their weight are struggling for emotional reasons. And so that's what we focus on here. What are those emotional reasons and how can you heal them? So welcome. If you're curious, please stick around. Now, I'm not a movie reviewer by trade, but I do see a lot of movies, and I'm here to share with you some of my thoughts on the most recent one I saw, and then I will be coming out with other shows that review other movies. But my review isn't an intellectual one. It's not a critical one. It's really about the aspects of a movie that touch me and move me and are really germane to the emotional eater's experience. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm looking for things that can really help us as emotional eaters heal. And this movie is such a beautiful portrayal of that journey from hatred to love that I felt absolutely compelled to share it with you. Now, I always know a movie's good when I'm thinking about it a few days after I saw it. You know, if I see a movie and then the next day I could barely remember what happened, or I don't really care what happened, not a great movie. If I see a movie and I'm mulling it over and thinking about it and different parts of it are coming to me 1 or 2 days later, I know I saw a good movie. And that is certainly true with the movie Hostiles. Now, I'm going to tell you just the Rotten Tomatoes version of this movie, their synopsis, because they do it better than I could. Here it is. Set in 1892, Hostiles tells the story of a legendary Army captain, Christian Bale, who, after stern resistance, reluctantly agrees to escort a dying Cheyenne war chief, played by Wes Studi, and his family back to tribal lands. Making the harrowing and perilous journey from Fort Behringer, an isolated Army outpost in New Mexico, to the grasslands of Montana, the former rivals, important word, rivals encounter a young widow, played by Rosamund Pike, whose family was murdered on the plains. Together, they must join forces to overcome the punishing landscape, hostile Comanche, and vicious outliers that they encounter along the way. So you see the setup here. I mean, these are former rivals who hated each other and fought viciously against each other, and a woman whose entire family was murdered. So these people have experienced some serious trauma and injustice, and they are carrying it in their hearts. They are bitter, they're hard-hearted, and they're angry, and they have no intention of giving any of those emotions up because they feel like it protects them. Now, how many times in your life have you felt like your anger has protected you? I know I did. Growing up, I experienced sexual abuse, and very early on, I was very young, 5 or 6 years old, and very young. At that young age, I learned that if I hated this person, if I constricted my heart, if I had this closed off, bitter, angry, critical attitude towards this person, that I felt safer, I felt protected, that even though I might have still had the experiences with this person, they wouldn't affect me if I hated them enough. Okay, and I didn't know that at the time. That's what I was doing. But on hindsight, through my recovery process, I realized that hatred became a tool for me to feel protected. The problem with that tool is I didn't just use it with that person. It became a habit, and I began to hate anybody I felt threatened by. So any situation that I felt threatened me, any person I felt threatened by, any person in my life who pushed me beyond my seeming limit, I just copped an attitude of hate towards this person. And maybe wasn't as strong as hate all the time, but definitely strong negativity. And you might see that in your life somewhere. If there's somebody who irritates you, you sort of bolster your forces and build this case against them, this case of negativity, and it makes you feel superior, it makes you feel stronger, and it makes you feel safer. And that's what I certainly did. And that habit of hating people who I felt threatened by was a very self-destructive habit, because while it made me feel safe early on, when I didn't have other tools at my disposal, it turned into an ugly, ugly liability. It was first a protection. It was a wall that made me feel safe. And then it became a prison that almost took my life. I mean, that wall of hate became an isolated prison that I could never have survived for the rest of my life if I hadn't changed. So this is what we're looking at here, is that wall of hate. And it's certainly in the movie, these characters had it. Oh, viscerally, you could feel how much hatred they had. And, and it seemed like an insurmountable thing. It seemed like throughout the movie, this hate was going to continue. But through a series of circumstances, these people began to have a softened heart toward one another. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but they definitely were not the same people at the end of the movie as they had been at the beginning of the movie. And this is what I want for you. This is what I really urge you to consider, that as emotional eaters, we carry a tremendous amount of hate in our hearts, hatred towards ourselves and hatred towards other people. And, we're usually focused just on the hatred towards ourselves because it feels like we really need self-love. That's what we need in order to heal. But I will say that self-love can never happen if you're not willing to change your stance towards the people you hate. Okay? And you may say, I don't hate anybody. I'm such a loving person. Well, here's the thing. Emotional eaters are great at putting it on, okay? We have that beautiful facade of loving everybody, of being loving and caring and caretaking and giving and people-pleasing, but there's a price to be paid for being as nice as we are. So I know that no matter how nice you are, chances are you've got a whole bunch of resentment built up inside your heart. I know that was certainly the case for me and for a whole bunch of other emotional eaters that I know. Maybe not you. You might be the exception, but for a whole lot of other ones, we're really good at hating, even though that's not the impression we have of ourselves and certainly not the impression others have of us, because we aren't so, quote, nice. So the bottom line is you're never going to love yourself or get over emotional eating if you don't transform the hate in your heart to love. And definitely it's about learning how to love yourself. And we are not good at that. But part of loving ourselves comes from forgiving other people. And that's why this movie touched me so much, because it really was about that journey of forgiveness. Sure, they were taking a journey from New Mexico to Montana, but during that trek, their hearts were being transformed, and that is the hardest journey of all, is forgiving those who have wronged you, those who have caused you real offense, and being willing to have a new perspective towards those people. And that's what I find that forgiveness really requires, is that we see from a new perspective, because so much of the time we've got people figured out and we judge them and we have them in their place and our opinions about them are set. But in order for things to change, we have to consider a new perspective. We have to consider aspects of their lives that we hadn't considered, perhaps what motivated them to do the things they did. I mean, hurt people. So oftentimes the people who did hurt us, whether it's family members or somebody in a religious, place of authority, or a teacher, or whoever it was who hurt us, chances are they were not of sound mind at the time, and they were suffering from abuses they experienced. And that's not to say you have to just, bypass the experience of really going through the hurt that you experienced and getting those feelings out. But ultimately, it's really about seeing how it was that those people did come to hurt us. And chances are they didn't have the tools available to them to do differently than they did. And so when we see that, it can help soften our heart towards these people. It can help us develop a sense of compassion towards them. And that's what I'm talking about, is having a new perspective on the situation. Or perhaps they just messed up, and it's going to require our forgiveness, and there's no way to explain it in another way than they messed up, and we have to find it in our hearts to forgive in spite of what was done. But the bottom line is, this journey of going from hatred to love is so powerful and so freeing. So if you're trapped in the bondage to food and fat, if you hate your body, if you can't stop eating, it's because there are things in your heart that are blocking you from experiencing freedom, from that grace that can remove that compulsion to overeat. I promise you that being willing to change your stance towards the people you've judged, including yourself, and you do have to change it towards yourself as well, being willing to change your stance can open up a whole bucket of freedom, a whole just incredible treasure trove of positive feelings, joy, love, just freedom and forgiveness and understanding and compassion and true fellowship and connection. And I'm not saying you have to go be besties with the people who hurt you, but when you open your heart and are willing to forgive, are willing to take a new stance and a new perspective on past hurts, I'm telling you, you will transform and you will open yourself up to all kinds of good things in your life, including weight loss, including freedom from emotional eating. Now, I'm not here to say this journey is easy, because it's not. It's the hardest thing you'll probably ever do. And if you watch this movie, you'll prefer the emotional journey of forgiveness versus the journey those guys went on, because they had to trek across the plains in the harshest of circumstances, both physical and physical meaning weather-wise, but also being threatened by attack and all the different things that happened to them along the way. Oh my goodness, this journey of freedom in your heart is much easier to their physical journey that they had to go through. So there's a little silver lining for you. But the bottom line is, you must take this journey. You must take this journey, and it's not easy, so I highly recommend you don't do it alone. My program, 10 Weeks to Freedom from Emotional Eating, is about creating the community and connection with other emotional eaters, and all the while being coached by me. This community that we've created through this program is so loving and so supportive that I invite you to be a part of it so you can get the support you need to take this journey. But whatever and however you do it, it must be done. So I encourage you and I urge you to be willing to consider changing your stance, both of yourself and both towards other people, and consider a softening of your heart to where you come to finally let other people off the hook and let yourself off the hook so you can finally live in love. And that's what this movie's about. Movie Hostiles, and that's what your journey needs to be about if you expect to be freed from compulsive overeating, any kind of disordered eating. You must find that forgiveness in your heart, and I want to support you in doing that if I can, and just encourage you to really realize it's not about the food. It really is about these deeper issues I'm talking about, because when our hearts are trapped with these emotions, when we're stuck in these emotions, love can't flow. And if love doesn't flow, we can't get the healing we need in order to overcome this debilitating addictive habit of emotional eating. So please watch the movie, whether it's out right now close to you or you get it later on Netflix. Do it. You will not be disappointed. It's a beautiful and very moving display of what that journey from hatred to love is really about. Thanks so much. Enjoy the show, and I'll see you next time on the Heal Your Hunger Show. Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed this show and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.